December 21, 1945, 6:30 a.m., Heidelberg, Germany. The winter air is brittle, sharp enough to sting the lungs. Frost clings to the bare branches outside the headquarters window, turning the Neckar River into a dull ribbon of steel. Inside, the room smells of stale coffee, paper, and coal smoke. A single lamp burns on a wooden desk cluttered with reports, occupation summaries, demobilization schedules, casualty lists that no longer shock anyone. Dwight D. Eisenhower sits alone. No aides, no press, no generals arguing over maps, just silence. He stares at a document he has not signed yet. It is not an order, not a commendation, not a reprimand. It is a private memorandum, never intended for public eyes, addressed to the War Department. His pen hovers, unmoving. For the first time in years, there is no enemy advancing, no crisis demanding speed. Only a name, George S. Patton. You can almost hear the echo of boots in Eisenhower's memory. The relentless pace of Patton's Third Army racing across France, engines screaming, tank tracks tearing up roads faster than supply lines could follow. Victories stacked so quickly they blurred together. Town after town liberated in days, not weeks. And yet, this document is not praise. Eisenhower exhales slowly, then finally presses pen to paper. What he writes will never be said aloud while Patton lives. Rewind 2 years. July 10, 1943. Gela, Sicily. The sand is hot, the air thick with cordite and salt. American troops claw their way off landing craft under fire, pinned down by German counterattacks. The invasion, Operation Husky, is already fraying at the edges. Confusion, broken radios, units landing in the wrong sectors. Then Patton arrives, not calmly, not methodically. He explodes onto the battlefield, helmet polished, pistols gleaming, voice cutting through the chaos like artillery fire. He doesn't ask for updates. He issues commands. Trucks are seized, units rerouted, objectives rewritten on the fly. Within hours, the line stabilizes. Within days, it surges forward. Patton doesn't just fight the enemy. He bullies the war into moving faster. Eisenhower watches all of this from a distance. Maps, radio traffic, terse field reports. On paper, it's brilliance, pure aggression, momentum weaponized. But even then, there's a cost. Patton ignores boundaries, disregards Allied coordination, chases glory as much as objectives. British commanders bristle. American officers complain quietly. Eisenhower smooths it over, again. Because for now, Patton wins. And in war, winning forgives much. August 1943. A field hospital in Sicily. The air inside is thick with antiseptic and despair. Wounded men lie on cots, some staring at the ceiling, others shaking uncontrollably. One soldier, Private Charles Kull, suffers from what doctors call combat exhaustion. Today, we name it differently. Then, it was weakness. Patton doesn't see trauma. He sees cowardice. The slap echoes. Once, then again. The room freezes. Within days, Eisenhower knows. This time, there is no smoothing it over. He summons Patton. Not publicly, quietly. A closed room. No witnesses. Eisenhower's words are controlled, clipped, devastating. Patton is ordered to apologize. To the soldier, to the unit, to the army. For months afterward, Patton is sidelined, command taken away, reputation hanging by a thread. Privately, Eisenhower writes that Patton is a brilliant commander but lacking balance. It is the first time doubt enters the record. June 1944. England. Patton stands in front of inflatable tanks, fake airfields, phantom divisions. He commands the 1st U.S. Army Group, the largest force that does not exist. The deception is deliberate. The Germans believe Patton will lead the main invasion at Pas-de-Calais. Eisenhower made this choice carefully. Patton is too valuable to waste, too dangerous to unleash prematurely. So he becomes a ghost general, weaponized for his reputation alone. And it works. When the real invasion hits Normandy, German panzer divisions stay locked in the wrong place, waiting for Patton. Even sidelined, Patton wins battles. August 1944. France burns with momentum. Now Eisenhower unleashes him. The Third Army roars to life, sweeping east with a ferocity no Allied force can match. Bridges are seized before they can be blown. German lines collapse faster than intelligence can track. Patton's tanks advance so rapidly that fuel, not resistance, becomes the enemy. Officers later say it felt less like command and more like a natural disaster. Eisenhower praises the results, but the complaints return. Patton ignores orders, pushes beyond agreed limits, risks exposure to counterattack. His mouth runs as fast as his armor, insulting allies, dismissing political realities, challenging civilian leadership. Eisenhower intervenes constantly, redirects, restrains, covers. Victory follows anyway, and that is the problem. December 1944. The Ardennes. Snow, fog, panic. The Germans strike with everything they have left. American lines buckle. Entire divisions are encircled. The word disaster appears in reports for the first time since Normandy. Eisenhower turns to Patton. Can you attack north? Patton doesn't hesitate. Give me 48 hours. He pivots an entire army, hundreds of thousands of men, in winter conditions, through ice-clogged roads, into the teeth of the offensive. Bastogne is relieved. The bulge begins to collapse. It is Patton at his finest, and Eisenhower knows it. But even in triumph, something has changed. Because as the war ends, as Germany falls, as victory becomes inevitable, Eisenhower begins to ask a different question, not how Patton fights, but what Patton would do next. December 1945. Back in Heidelberg, Eisenhower sets the pen down. The memorandum is finished. It acknowledges Patton's genius, his unmatched aggression. Then, quietly, almost painfully, it admits something else. That Patton, in peace, might have become a liability. That his instincts, so perfect for chaos, had no brakes. That had he lived longer, his defiance, his politics, his mouth, could have fractured the very victory he helped secure. Eisenhower folds the paper. Patton is dead, and only now does the truth come out. December 26, 1945. Heidelberg Army Hospital. Snow presses softly against the windows, muting the world outside. Inside the ward, machines hum with a steady, mechanical patience. The war is over, but here, death still works quietly. George S. Patton lies motionless. His body, once powered by rage, motion, and velocity, is broken by a car accident so mundane it feels obscene. No battlefield, no gunfire, just a quiet German road and a split second of fate. His neck is fractured. His hands are still. His eyes, once blazing, now stare at nothing. Eisenhower does not visit. Officially, he is too busy. Occupation matters. Reconstruction. Politics. Unofficially, there is something else. Something unfinished. Because even in death, Patton is causing problems. Patton had not gone quietly into peace. In the months after Germany's surrender, he shocked everyone. Again, as military governor of Bavaria, Patton openly criticized denazification. He compared former Nazi party members to American political parties, dismissed the urgency of purges, and argued that Germany needed experienced administrators, regardless of their past. The press erupted. Washington panicked. Allies were furious. To Patton, it was honesty. To Eisenhower, it was a threat, because the war they were now fighting was not with tanks, but with narratives. And Patton did not understand restraint. September 1945. Eisenhower removes Patton from command, not with a court-martial, not with public disgrace, but with something Patton despises more than punishment: irrelevance. He is reassigned to the 15th Army, an administrative unit tasked with writing war histories. No troops, no operations, no glory. A desk job for a man who lived on forward motion. Patton is humiliated. He writes to his wife that he feels finished, that the army no longer wants warriors, only politicians in uniform. Eisenhower reads these reports, and says nothing, because now, finally, he sees Patton clearly. You have to understand Eisenhower's burden. He was not just a general, he was a coalition manager. British egos, French pride, American politics, Soviet suspicion, civilian leadership watching every move. He survived not by brilliance alone, but by balance. Patton had none. Patton was fire, useful only when carefully contained, and Eisenhower had spent the entire war containing him. After Patton's death, the army moves quickly. State funeral, honor guard, flags, speeches about courage and sacrifice. The public version of Patton is polished, heroic, uncomplicated. But behind closed doors, Eisenhower speaks freely for the first time. To aides, to confidants, to private correspondence never meant for headlines, he admits something startling: that Patton was indispensable only in war, that his insubordination was tolerated, not admired, that had the war continued into a political standoff with the Soviets, Patton's recklessness could have ignited something far worse. Eisenhower writes that Patton lacked the judgment required for the world we are entering. This is not bitterness, it is relief. And then comes the most damning realization of all. Eisenhower understands that Patton never evolved. While others adapted, From battlefield commanders to statesmen, Patton remained locked in a single mode: attack. The same instinct that crushed the Wehrmacht would have shattered alliances. The same mouth that terrified enemies would have embarrassed governments. Patton was a weapon, and the war no longer needed weapons. One aide later recalls Eisenhower standing silently after hearing of Patton's death, not grieving, thinking, as if weighing an outcome no one else dared say aloud. Patton had died at the only moment when his legend could remain intact. Before scandal, before insubordination became mutiny, before hero became liability, history would never see what Eisenhower had already seen, because the truth Eisenhower never said publicly was this: George S. Patton did not survive into peace because peace would have defeated him, and that truth, once admitted, changed how Eisenhower would approach the next war entirely. A war without front lines, without uniforms, without Patton, and without forgiveness for recklessness. The Cold War was coming, and Eisenhower would make sure there was no place in it for generals like Patton. January 1953, Washington, D.C., Inauguration Day. A pale winter sun hangs over the Capitol, glinting off marble and brass buttons. The crowd is thick, restless, hopeful. Bands play, flags snap in the cold wind. Cameras click as Dwight David Eisenhower steps forward, not as Supreme Allied Commander, but as President of the United States. He places his hand on the Bible, and in that moment you can almost feel it, the weight of every decision that brought him here. Normandy, Bastogne, Berlin, and threaded through all of it, the shadow of one man who is not here to see this day. George S. Patton. Eisenhower takes the oath. The age of generals charging across continents is over. Behind closed doors, Eisenhower governs like a man who has already seen how the world ends. His military doctrine is cautious, calculated, almost restrained to the point of frustration. He favors deterrence over confrontation, nuclear balance over ground invasions, coalitions over crusades. To many it feels timid. To Eisenhower, it is survival, because he remembers Patton. During early Cold War briefings, advisors occasionally argue for bold action: roll back communism, push harder, test the Soviets, use American power before the enemy grows stronger. Eisenhower listens, then he says no, again and again. Privately, he explains why. He has seen what happens when aggression outpaces judgment, when momentum becomes addiction, when victory blinds men to consequence. Patton won battles, but Eisenhower is trying to prevent a war that no one could win. One staffer later recalls Eisenhower tapping his desk during a tense meeting and saying quietly, "I have buried enough brave men." He doesn't need to say Patton's name. Everyone knows. The truth Eisenhower revealed after Patton's death was not just about Patton. It was about leadership. That brilliance without restraint is dangerous. That courage without humility corrodes institutions. That wars are not won by heroes alone, but by systems that survive them. Patton was a masterpiece of destruction. Eisenhower chose preservation. Years later, historians would argue endlessly. Was Eisenhower too cautious? Did America miss opportunities? Could Patton have checked the Soviets if he had lived? Eisenhower never answers, because he already lived the answer. He saw what unchecked aggression looked like in human form. He commanded it. He managed it. He buried it. And then he built a world where it could not happen again. In his final years, Eisenhower warns the nation about the military-industrial complex, a phrase that shocks Americans coming from a five-star general. He speaks of balance, of limits, of the need to resist the temptation of constant mobilization. This, too, is Patton's legacy. Not the speeches, not the slaps, not the charging tanks, but the lesson left behind in silence. Because the most important thing Eisenhower ever admitted about Patton was never written for the public. It lived in his decisions. In the wars he refused to fight. In the generals he never promoted. In the fire he never unleashed again. Patton won the last great conventional war. Eisenhower made sure it would be the last.